by Carlton King, the former Scotland Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy Podcast, the show that shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, and also looks into the world of geopolitics. Today's show is a little bit different because what we're going to do is we're going to have a listen to, one of the things I often do actually is do talks with people. They ask me questions and I do a question and answer session. So this is a question and answer session that I did, which I'm putting out on the show this week. I hope you enjoy it.
So I'm one of the co-founders of DAPS. Mark heads up our broadcast media, so hence that's
fantastic.
A little black square there.
Yeah.
And as I say, as other people drop in, I'll just put who they are in the chat.
Great.
Brill. So over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed the intro was a touch wrong. The intro put me down as being a member of the security service, which you know better as MI5. And obviously, I was a member of the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6. But my parent organisation, for want of a better word, was the Metropolitan Police Special Branch, or the special branch that came out of Scotland Yard. So that's my parent organisation, if you will. That's where I spent most of my time in various guises. Obviously, one worked day in, day out with the security service, because I don't know if you guys know, the security service MI5 have no powers of arrest, can't question people, can't carry firearms, etc., etc., etc. And all of that, of course, the special branch could do, and I say could in the past tense, because the Special Branch was formed in 1883 as the first intelligence and security service in the United Kingdom to fight what was then the Fenian, because it was called the Special Irish Branch. And the Fenian Brotherhood, which is the Irish Brotherhood who wanted independence from Great Britain, carried out a campaign of what we would today call terrorism, and went blowing up various people, killing various people, etc., etc. And so this unit was formed, the Special Irish Branch, to defeat them. So that worked from 1883 all the way through till 2006, when it was disbanded by a foolish commissioner of the metropolis. And we've been downhill since that process. So that basically gives you a quick overview. And within the branch and within, I'll call it MI6 because it's probably better familiar to you, the Secret Intelligence Service. I was a case officer, which is best description. Basically, the guy who does the James Bond stuff, that was me in real life. I was in countering terrorism, so I countered terrorism around the world. As the case officer, you're the guy who sets up all the operations and recruits agents. We don't call ourselves agents, we call ourselves officers. People we recruit are the ones who we call agents, because they're people we want to recruit in organisations. So if there's a terrorist organisation, the best person you want is somebody in that terrorist organisation, because then you know what they are planning. And the whole point of intelligence is to gather what individuals are doing and prevent that, or at least ameliorate that, because you've got intelligence. Now, in the Special Branch, I was many various different things. We basically deal with national security internal to the United Kingdom. So that would be, obviously in the old days, defeating the IRA, because that was still the primary role. Then, obviously, we had roles in defeating all types of terrorism. Espionage, so if he was a spy arrested in the UK, we would be the ones who would arrest the spy in tandem with the security service, MI5, because they've got no powers of arrest, as I've explained to you. So it would come under the auspices of the Special Branch. Then it was countering all sorts of things, from animal liberation to extreme right-wing organisations. So I've done most, and then, of course, the other role of the special branch was worldwide to protect our most senior ministers, Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary, Home Secretary, etc., and also to protect people coming into the United Kingdom who are heads of state and heads of government. So the President of the United States, President of Russia, Chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Chancellor of Germany, etc., when they come to the UK. And obviously that's an armed role which we would carry out in the UK and around the world. So that's me in a nutshell. I should say before that, I was a detective for the Americans, for the American Department of Defense. And I was a detective in Germany for the Germans. And yeah, so that's sort of me in a nutshell. And if you're interested, I've just put out last week, so I won't plug the book. If you're interested, you can read my book, which is called Black Ops, The Incredible True Story of a British Secret Agent.
Now I've read the book, Carlton, and I think most people would be surprised to know that you ended your journey into being an undercover agent and operating in the Secret Service started out because you were a DJ.
Correct. I was a DJ. I was a professional DJ in Germany. Before that, actually, I was offered a contract to play professional football, which I turned down. You got to realise this is the early 70s. And it was only a third division team, which is, I guess, now League One. Yeah, would be League One now. And I was obviously playing for the reserves, and they offered me a professional contract. My dad was a professional cricketer, so he thought that was brilliant. I didn't, because the salaries weren't the salaries that they are today. So that's the first thing. And secondly, there wasn't anything of the peripatetic, anything of the, I guess what you could call it, of the attempts they make now to secure footballers. So if you broke your leg today, there's all sorts of assistance for footballers. In those days, they just throw you away. And it was a much stronger game. So, you know, people breaking their legs and never playing again was something that wasn't abnormal. So I decided not to do that, and basically was in the sixth form, going to be a PE teacher, and I just fell into, because I like music, I fell into being a DJ. And because I was a professional, I was offered a contract to play in West Germany, as it was then, and that's what I did. So that's the DJ aspect.
but my caveat here is being able to DJ isn't actually a prerequisit of. It's not something you need to have on your CV in order to join the Secret Service. However, can you share a few skills that are useful? I mean, I know we've had this conversation before, but what life skills?
Prerequisite. Now, it depends what service you are going to go to. In my parents' service, the special branch, basically what they wanted from me was a very good knowledge of current affairs. So there was a long examination process, and part of it was that. Understanding how the UK was put together and created was interesting for them because they're dealing with national security. So an understanding of the Irish problem, let's use that terminology, was required. And in fact, one of the things you had to write was a paper that said Northern Ireland should be part of the United Kingdom, discuss. So it was a question as to whether you feel it should be and whether there was a right for people to fight a war to, if you will, have it as an independent state. So, or a state connected to the south, to ERA. So there was that. So there was an understanding of politics, and that was worldwide politics, because in the United Kingdom, because of our history, because the UK once used to control a third of the world's population and about just over a third of the world's landmass, you basically had everybody and anybody who wanted to, as you can see from the Commonwealth Games now, who wanted to overthrow their country, sat in the United Kingdom, because that's the land they knew. That's why we get a lot of people who come to the United Kingdom, because that was the mother country, as it was called in the old days. And for 200-300 years, most of these people were connected to the United Kingdom and told the UK is your mother country. So when there was the First World War, Second World War, etc., they fought for the country, believing it was theirs. So we'd have the children of those people, or those people themselves, and when they became independent, basically the 60s, 40s through to 60s and 70s, they still had an allegiance, a movement towards the United Kingdom. And so from the Middle East to Africa to Asia, you'd find people in London in particular but in Great Britain, who wished to change their country's scenario would carry that out. Now, why is that important? Because sometimes it's not always done positively. So sometimes you would have, let's take Iraq, that used to be a protectorate of the United Kingdom example. You'd have Saddam in the old days trying to kill people who were sat in Great Britain because they were trying to overthrow him, and he'd send out his intelligence officers to kill them in the UK. The same would happen with Libya. The same, you could go on and on, loads of other countries. And those who weren't trying to kill them were keeping an eye on their citizens in the UK. So we obviously kept an eye on what they were doing, and their citizens, of course, as well. So that's a prerequisite, was understanding the politics. The other bit that was important was language. So if you had language skills, that was great. People wanted language skills. You had to be able to write well, because people wanted, your reports could end up on the Home Secretary's desk for sure, and maybe the Prime Minister's desk. And you should be able to kind of blend in with people. We did a lot of sort of long-term undercover operations where you had to be able to blend into people, into operations. So all of those were prerequisites for the special branch. And by essence, probably about the same for the security service, whom we worked very, very closely with, albeit they weren't as hands-on as we were, although our operations were often in tandem with them. Now, for the Secret Intelligence Service, you need to add to that an ability to work externally to the United Kingdom and do all the same things. But behind them all, agent recruitment, i.e. recruiting sources of intelligence, is one of the most necessary things. And for that, you need a good understanding of people. And you have to be able to, I guess the word I'd say is to, on your feet, think about how things should be done and be able to talk to people. That's the process.
So, Carlton, when you talk about blending in, you're a dad and you've got a family, and you essentially had to completely change your personality to go undercover, but also you were away from your family for years on end. Can you tell us a bit about that?
It covers very sensitive areas, but in terms of the family, yeah, look, there's a price to be paid. Is that price worth it? Oh, that's a big question. That's a very big question, whether it was worth it. My children paid a price for it. They were told never to say dad in the street or whatever, not to hold my hand in the street, etc. when I got a chance to see them. And so I could never see their plays. I never went to see them at Nativity. I never went to see the school games stuff. So, and even if they were ill in hospital, then maybe not as well. So is that a price worth paying? At the time, you probably thought it was. Subsequently, probably not. The reason being that politicians, who I'm not necessarily the greatest fan thereof, spin things to their advantage. And of course, we were then in a Cold War with the Soviet Union. And so therefore, it was something that was perceived as positive. But once that Cold War was over, they quickly forgot. And so then they can be negative towards things that have happened based on those days and times as to when it happened. So that's your problem with that. The problem is there's a lot of misunderstanding of how those things work, and it's difficult to go into how they worked. So it allows room for that misunderstanding and for people just blatantly making stuff up or not understanding how things worked. So yeah, there's a price to be paid, and is that price worth it? It's a toss-up.
So can you tell us a bit about what a day in... I know we've spoken about this before, but what does a day in the life really look like when you're undercover? Because I know that you can't... you've told me in the past that you get one contact call with your key person or whatever, just to say you're alive, but you can't blow your cover. How hard is that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a subject which, again, is a very sort of... Because without giving background, you can't really understand the subject. What you're talking about is ultra deep cover. We're not talking about now a fellow just working in plain clothes. And oftentimes people misunderstand that. They think of undercover and they think of... There's a unit in the Met called SO10, Metron Police, in the yard. That unit basically did criminal undercover work. And doing that criminal undercover, I'm not saying it's easy, it isn't, but there was a time frame involved in that criminal undercover work. And there was
Carlton, I'm just going to stop you there. Just to explain to everyone else, criminal undercover work means essentially they're asking you to act as though you're a criminal.
Yes, but also what they're doing in criminal undercover work, there's a reason. So let's say it was a drugs job or whatever they were working on. What they want to do is they want to put somebody undercover in that drugs area to gather information as much as they can. It's all being recorded. They're all gathering it together. And then at some stage, probably within a month, 2 months, 3 months, maximum 5 months, I would say, that case is coming into court and they're going to bring that case through court. They're going to arrest the people and it's all over. Yeah. That's done. That's not the way it worked in the branch. In the branch, you were working at undercover work that had to do with politics and political conception, right? So therefore, that would never end. You could be doing that for 6 years or whatever. It would never end. And it would never go to a court because there wasn't a reason for it to go to a court. The whole idea was to prevent what actions were trying to be taken. So if that was, say, the left wing, a lot of the left wing groups who were involved, who might be looked at, would have been in the old days obtaining funds or at least succor from the Soviet Union. So their job was basically to undermine and cause fizzes and fractures within the United Kingdom. So, in other words, to make as much strife as they can within the UK and stop the Queen's peace from going ahead nicely without there being any problems. So your reasoning within that process was to make sure that the usage that they were trying to put to, and let me say, before I say anything else, yes, that's what the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact were doing. We were obviously doing the same in the other direction. So, of course, secret intelligence services, CIA, MI6, and other agencies were doing the same in the Soviet Union and in the Warsaw Pact, because this is a global conflict. So it was what they called a Cold War, but in some places it was hot. So, for example, there were millions of people dying in Angola, not because of Angola, but because it was the East and West fighting each other in Angola via proxies. So these were real, or Vietnam, you could say, or Cambodia, you could say, and I could go on and on, or in South America. So these were real wars that were being fought in other people's lands, and other people were dying for them, right? To prevent communism or to prevent capitalism, whichever way you want to look at it, right? This is a conflict that was going on. So in the Western world, where the war wasn't hot, that conflict was being fought in different ways by causing trouble and strife in those countries. Think of Solidarność in Poland, the Solidarity movement, obviously supported. Think of the miners' strike in Britain, supported by the Soviet Union. Okay, because, of course, it undermines the United Kingdom government and Thatcher. So this is what these people don't understand that. They don't understand the background to these things. So it's difficult to talk about them because they're ultra sensitive, and maybe we should move from that subject.
All right, I'll flip to the other extreme then.
Yeah.
You've provided personal protection for royals and for prime ministers and celebrities and
not celebrities.
International royalty. Faves.
No, let me explain, because this is, again, we provided in Special Branch, and then subsequently I was one of the people who formed the new organisation, not because I didn't want to change the branch, but because it was foisted upon us. It's now called SO1 Specialist Protection. We provided the protection for our leading politicians, and by that I mean Foreign Secretary, Home Secretary, Prime Minister, Defence Secretary. So it's not many, but they're getting 24 hours, day in, day out, personal protection. And I'm talking about the guys and gals moving with the individual, not people standing on doors in uniform or whatever, but you moving around with them. And that's globally. Okay, so you're doing that globally. You're also then providing that protection, obviously armed. You're obviously providing that protection for people coming to the United Kingdom who are prime ministers of their country, foreign secretaries of their country, presidents of their country, and people who are at threat. So the only ones I can think about who wouldn't have been any of them would be somebody like Salman Rushdie, example. We protected him because he was at threat from another state, okay, which had a fatwa against him and wanted to kill him. So he got protected by the branch. As for royalty, that protection is provided by royalty protection because the threat wasn't perceived to be that great to them. So there's another body called Royalty Protection, which is in the Met Police also, who protected them. Now, it's a uniform body. They're not in uniform, but it's a uniform body, whereas a special branch was obviously all plainclothes in the branch. And that uniform body basically only did protection, whereas you would move between protection and intelligence in special branch because intelligence is the utmost importance to carry out protection. Now, the reason why I explain that is I have protected example Prince Charles and various others when they go to dangerous places and intelligence is required. So Prince Charles in Saudi Arabia. So I went out there to sort that out for him. So, but that's not our day job. He's going somewhere very dangerous. People knew about it. And the intelligence aspect thereof needed to be gathered and collected. So that was something that I was doing. So nothing to do with the guys you see doing protection for, I don't know, stars or whatever. Those are totally private. They can't carry any type of weapons in the UK. They probably have very little training, and they are not, they are not the same. It's completely
okay.
different.
So Carlton, give us the definitive lowdown on the Harry and Meghan conversation about protection.
Right.
What's the actual answer here?
Yeah, Harry and Meghan would be protected by royalty protection, okay, which is part of the Metropolitan Police. Okay, now, they're saying because they are no longer royals, they should not receive personal protection, which is very, very expensive. I can see the argument. If you're going to turn around and say they're not a threat, then I don't see the argument, because there is probably a greater threat to them, because there are people who may perceive that they've done the United Kingdom down and who have maybe mental health issues, who might think this might be a good, I'm going to sort out this Meghan because of that. Because with royals, actually, one of the primary elements that they've got to deal with is fixated individuals. Individuals who just, for whatever reason want to do a royal harm because they're fixated in royals, or maybe just want to stay with them, like go and see the Queen and just sit next to and lie next to, like that guy did. So that fixation can be problematic. So that is the thing with royals. Now, Harry and Meghan, they have then got private protection in the United States, which they've paid for. And I would argue that it's a difficult one because they give lesser royals protection than them. But because they have come out of the fold, they're saying you don't deserve it. Now, it's a big one. And if you're going to try and say they're at no threat, that's wrong, because they are. But if you're going to say it's saving money and they've chosen not to be active royals, then there's an argument there. And so it's at a governmental level where that decision is made. It's not made by royalty protection. At the governmental level, they will say, yes, they get the protection, or no, they don't. So that's the point there. Yeah,
I hear you. Interesting. Another interesting argument, and then I'm going to hand over questions to the floor, essentially. But just I know, again, we've spoken about this before, Carlton, a lot, but I know you personally believe that the Met Police in the UK should be armed.
Yeah, all police, indeed.
And when we spoke about this, you gave me an incredibly eloquent argument about why, and you talked about London Bridge, and that there's a lot in there. It is controversial, but I wondered if you can share it with our guys.
Absolutely. The first thing I'd say is that forget the United States. Okay, that's the first thing I'll say, because your primary argument always is, but look at them in the States. They shoot people left, right, and centre. Okay, and that's true. And actually, some of the shootings in the US are actually outright murders. And I will not say anything other than that. These officers are killing people, murdering them. I would argue that. So that's the first thing. So United States is a better example. Let's go to Japan. So I've been to about 3/4 of the countries in the world, and I've worked with most police, intelligence, security agencies. And the vast majority, to about 98% of all police are armed around the world. So if you look at Japan, which has probably about the lowest crime rate amongst industrialized countries, 160 odd million people, they hardly ever have a murder. All their police carry, they're all armed. You don't hear them killing people, right? I think the last time they probably killed people must be ages ago. I can't even think of when they did. Right. Now, the other argument is, dead simple argument, is look at Northern Ireland, which is a part of the United Kingdom. And people don't like to say this. It's a part of the United Kingdom. Every officer in the PSNI, that's the Police Service of Northern Ireland, carries a weapon. Every officer has a sidearm. They hardly ever draw them. In fact, more weapons are drawn in London by the police, by the few who, it's about 6% of police in London carry, okay? So that included us in the protection arena. 6%, that's all. And if you come outside of London, it's about 4%, some places 2%, who carry daily, right? Now, those 6% in London draw their weapons more than people in Northern Ireland, where every officer carries. Okay, so that's the first thing. So there is no prerequisite for you to be killing people just because you have a weapon. Secondly, when the Troubles were on in Northern Ireland, and the RUC as it was then, it changed its name from the Royal Constabulary to the Police Service of Northern Ireland, of course, every officer carried, but they were the target. IRA individuals were sneaking up behind them and shooting them in the back of the head, etc., etc. They still were not killing people. So there is no requisite for that. It's all about what the state does and how the state then holds individuals to count. So London Bridge is a primary example, or other issues. You find people who are hell-bent on killing individuals. The police turn up, and invariably when they turn up, they are not armed, of course, because 94% of them are not. Yeah. They then have to wait for an armed unit to turn up or act in a suicidal fashion and put themselves on offer to basically commit suicide against people who are armed and who want to kill people. So the point of a weapon is, like any other piece of equipment that an officer carries, it's a piece of equipment that they make a decision on as to whether to use it at that time. And they're held accountable for that. I'll give you a primary example of it. Back in about 82, a colleague from Special Branch was protecting the Israeli ambassador. They came out of, it was a single man protection, never believed in them, wrong thing, you should never have a single person protection. But anyway, it was in those days. They came out of the Dorchester Hotel, Big Do, and as they came out, an Abu Nidal terrorist raised his Scorpion machine pistol and fired rounds into the Israeli ambassador, hit him. He then turned that weapon directly onto the Special Branch officer, clicked it, and it didn't. Okay. The Special Branch officer pulled his weapon. The guy ran off, and he was trying to clear his weapon. In other words, get the bullet which had lodged in the weapon while he couldn't fire it. He was trying to clear it. And as he turned to fire because he cleared it, the Special Branch officer shot the guy once, yeah, and then was able to stop him, great shot, stop him, push the weapon away from him, and have him arrested. Run back to his ambassador, and the ambassador survived, but he was a paraplegic from that moment on. Now, what happened with that officer? You'd think, well done, officer, fantastic. You've done a great job. You stopped the terrorist, by the way, didn't kill him, fired once. You stopped a terrorist who was trying to kill the ambassador and then subsequently was trying to kill you and potentially anybody else in his way because he wanted to get away. No, they put him in front of the Old Bailey and they said, why did you shoot him? Because he was running away, okay? Now, that is what happens in Britain. So you're not going to get the situation whereby British police are going to be shooting people willy-nilly because every officer knows they will put you in front of a court and you better be 100% right as to why you fired those rounds. So it's not willy-nilly. It's not substandard people. If they are good enough to be officers, by the way, the British police have some of the most strongest criminal powers in any police force I know of. So I told you I used to work in Germany. They have a guy called a Staatsanwalt, which is like a district attorney. And basically, when an officer arrests somebody, general duty officer, he has to arrest them, they say, for übergehend festgenommen. So they say you are arrested for this period of time because they don't have the power to arrest them fully. The Staatsanwalt, the district attorney, has to make then the decisions. He's a little bit like the CPS, but stronger, make decisions as to whether this guy can be held and kept. In Britain, every police officer has the power to arrest somebody. Not for crimes which he's seeing happening, but I'll quote the law to you, where an officer believes an arrestable offence has been committed, he may arrest any person whom he suspects has committed an arrestable offence. So in other words, he does not know there's an offence, but he's suspecting it, and he's arresting the suspect for the offence. Absolute power. They don't have that in other places. So British police are very powerful in terms of their power. Now, if you're going to give somebody that type of power, then why are you so fearful of providing them with the tools to keep you safe? That's my argument.
And we, as I said before, we've spoken about this before, and I think it's a very powerful argument. I'm going to hand over to the floor in a minute, so I'm hoping that questions ready to go. But just to revert back to the idea that everybody has about James Bond, you do actually have a suit. You have a Hugo Boss suit, right? I've seen it. I've seen this suit. I've seen you had a specially made suit where you can conceal your weapons, right?
This is correct.
Come on, tell us more.
Well, funnily enough,
do you actually go into Hugo Boss and say, "Can you make me that suit that does the weapons"?
No. What happened is there's a guy in. Let me not get it wrong. Is he in Hong Kong, or is he in? I think it's Hong Kong. It could be Philippines. Who has the Hugo Boss affiliation, and he makes suits in like a week, if that. It's not even a week. It's actually 3-4 days. Measures you up, has your measurements, sorts you out, and he can and does, because he knows the situation, because you're taken there often by an officer from either Hong Kong or Filipino services. I think it's Hong Kong when I think about it, Hong Kong services, and basically he says, right, you're the special customer, yeah, okay. Do you need something for your equipment? And you just say, yes, I would do. Great. So he then produces these suits with your measurements for you so you can wear them. Now, and he produces them and it's superbly done, Taylor. Now, of course, there is a problem with that because that guy could be collecting information for, say, the Chinese intelligence agencies and and he'd have anybody's height, length, or whatever else.
So essentially what you're saying is... So what you're saying is like us having the James Bond Casino Royale sort of, black tux thing where he's got the concealed weapon, that we're actually providing intelligence, counterintelligence via the Taylor, right?
Could be. If it were me, I'd be. If it were me and this guy's in London, I'd be going to him from the branch and say, listen, everybody's suit you take a special, give me the details. So yeah, it just depends on how. Mind you, having said that, Hong Kong was at that stage a colony of the United Kingdom when this guy started off, and so was in the orbit for 1997 of the UK. And of course, since then, he still works there. And there are still officers who worked in the old days who still work in Hong Kong police who are still there. So yeah, but it's an interesting one. I always think about that. I always think that the best intelligence services in the world must be the Ghanaian intelligence service because they do all the cleaning in all the offices everywhere, and they'd be great agents.
Okay, I'm going to do. I've spoken a lot to Carlton. I'm going to do questions to the floor. Who's got a question?
I've got loads of questions, Carlton, but I'm not sure that you might not be able to answer them too soon.
Well, if I can't, I'll say no. But if I can, I will. Absolutely. Just put forward.
You know what I'm quite interested in? I know you said that you work with a lot of countries, right? Mm-hmm. So I used to live in France and Germany as well. And I remember seeing lots of, policemen with guns at train stations and whatnot. And this was in the 90s as well, when there was a lot of Islamic terrorism from North Africa. Mm-hmm. I was just wondering, in terms of the European Union and Brexit, are we still really aware of what's going on now? Are the lines of communication between all these countries still good?
That's a superb question, my friend. Is it, Mark?
It is, yeah. I'm hoping it would be a good question because I'm not part of the DAPS gang. I'm not 14 years old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, I'm 100% European Union guy. So I'm telling you that. So you probably want to aim off for my Europhile perspective. But what I will say in the secret intelligence and national security world and policing world, being part of the European Union, by the way, we ran Europol. The head of Europol was a Brit. And now he no longer is, clearly, because we're no longer in the European Union. So that's just one thing, just to give you an example. The relations between services, intelligence and security services will still be there. The relations between police will still be there, but nothing like to the extent that they were. So, example, the everyday, regular, I don't know, West Yorkshire police officer who stops a car could just enter into the policing systems of the other 28 countries and check that car out and that individual. He can't do that anymore. Right? So that's just one thing. And that was checked millions of times. Right? He no longer has access to that. Right? Well, that's just one basic level. If you look at it in my game, then there's two twists to that. One will be, because we are no longer brother and sister countries, okay, there's an aspect of the Secret Intelligence Service, and I'm not saying anything super sensitive here, that is called, one of the duties of the service is upholding the economic well-being of the United Kingdom. Because at the end of the day, a country cannot function without it being economically viable and economically advantageous, right? So what that's going to lead to, and that's in all services, by the way, that would be in the United States or the GDSC in France or the Bundesnachrichtendienst in Germany, any of them, it's going to be the same. So now we are effectively a competitor nation with the European Union. I don't need to spell out to you what that means for espionage, okay? So that's closeness now to a profile whereby we're in competition. So you can see where that leads. There's also then grievously held perspectives in terms of terror and terrorism and political offences, whereby in the past, you see, Europol, basically Interpol, people hear about Interpol and they think it's a police system that just runs itself worldwide. It's not. Basically, it's a switching station for police around the world who all come into Interpol and move their information around. And they put red notices out, green notices, whatever. If you'll note, it doesn't touch terrorism. And the reason why Interpol doesn't touch terrorism is dead simple. It's because they're political offences or politically oriented offences. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Right? Europol touched terrorism in a way because we were all in the same nation. Effectively, what people don't understand, you were in the nation of the European Union. Right? So if, example, you went to Ouagadougou, example, where we didn't have an embassy, you could go to any embassy, so the French embassy, because they have an embassy there, and they'd have to give you consular assistance because we were citizens of the European Union. So that's how close we were, okay? Very, very close. So that's why political offences were also included in that process. And the movement of that was included in that process. So we've lost on that. So it is not the same. Don't let anybody try and bluff you and tell you that it's the same. It is not the same. Even on the borders, you're not getting the same intel that you used to get. Now, are they going to let somebody blow someone up in Britain? Probably not, because it's not advantageous, because we were exchanging data. But are you going to get data at first instance? Probably not. So the European arrest warrant is a good example of that. You had a European arrest warrant, these guys hiding out in Spain in the Costa del Sol or in Italy or wherever. You just need to provide sufficient information that our court was happy with, and then you put in the European arrest warrant, and then you bring them back to our court without there to be a need for another court. Now you've got to go through the old system of commission rogatoires, which is a letter of authority. That court has to look at it in that country, and that court may or may not send the person to the United Kingdom. So it's all changed.
Do you know what? I know this is Mark's question. I'm doing my usual thing, and everybody in DAP's like face palms me because I always just crash their conversations. But so does that mean actually that we can't that in the UK we wouldn't have up to date information on the Maddie McCann case or something like that?
Look, if they're working in unison with the Portuguese, and the Portuguese are happy to work in unison with them, yes, but that's on a case-by-case basis rather than as a given. That's where the difference is. It was a given. The same way as it was a given for you to go and live, work, go to school, be a student in the university of, it was your right. Now you're having to ask. And when you have to ask somebody for something, it's a completely different circumstance. That's the point.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to you, Mark. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's actually because I just remember, Carlton, at the time, 2 or 3 years ago, when everyone was talking about Brexit, that this was a big topic, was this whole sort of security thing, about, as you just said, not being part of like a single nation, which meant you've got to ask for information for something going on in another country and all that sort of thing. So I just wanted to get your sort of take on that, or whether that was actually correct, or whether
Absolutely
it was
correct. In fact, it was underplayed. It was underplayed.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Well, Carlton, actually, do you know what? You summed this up really well. You've got a podcast episode where you summed this up really well. And I know I thought the way that you summed up on your podcast episode about how they should have played out Brexit, i.e., like the way that you would have done it in the hypothesized the situation and shown people what it might look like, how that might have had a political impact.
Yeah, I think the problem was, we got to go back to the genesis of this thing. It was a battle within the Tory party. Sir John Major, whom I ran his spot, who was a man who didn't use incorrect verbiage, did use incorrect verbiage relating to the particular wing of his party that was Eurosceptic, as they finally began to call it. He knew that we throw away power, because you see, what you got to understand is what happened is, with the United States, most powerful country in the world, and obviously our closest ally in one sense, when it wants us to be, basically utilized us as a bridge between it and the European Union. So we had this Anglo perspective that we were giving within the European Union. And the European Union, because it knew how close we were to the United States, used us as a bridge between it and the United States. That gave us immense power to shape things in that middle ground. Right. Now, of course, what we did is overnight, we gave that role, because the European Union is here to stay. It is a massive, powerful state. It's got 16 trillion, in GDP, right, if you put it all together. Okay, so that makes it then more powerful than China. When you look at it in terms of GDP, which has got 13 trillion GDP. Obviously, the United States has got an 18 trillion GDP. Right. So this is where you got to understand the politics of it. So Trump, who is an ultra-American, right, hates the European Union. Why did he hate it? Because you've got a body that is 16 trillion that does not have to listen to the US, okay? So it would like it to have fall off into its little countries. So Britain now, our GDP is what, 2.7, 2.6 now, probably dropped down, right? So you're looking at 2.6. It can control that, not a problem. Even Germany, by far the wealthiest country in Europe, which is GDP was about 4.1, 4.2. Because it's been hit now, right? So way above us, right? But again, it could deal with that. But when you put it all together, it couldn't. So therefore, yes, of course, the US, when you got to that ultra-right-wing type, wanted to destroy it. When you were looking at the Democratic side and some of the Republican side, who didn't want to destroy it and wanted the way it was, they were happy with the process. But what we did is we led ourselves out of that process and made ourselves less relevant. And we should have argued that perspective. But we also should have said, additionally, that for the everyday man and woman in the United Kingdom, look at what you get from it. You can go on holiday abroad, and if you take ill, you can go into their hospitals. It doesn't cost you a penny. Yeah, look, you can bring as much booze back as you want. If you want to bring a lorry full of booze back, as long as it's for personal use, you could do. Nothing was checked. Now, you can't do any of that. You can't roam on your phone free of charge. All the good things that came through the union, you've thrown away. You can't send your children to the university there free of charge. All these things have all ended. And we should have been utilising that, but we didn't. That would have been my argument.
So listen, I'm really conscious of time because we need to be off this call in 4 minutes, but I'm going to go to Zahara. Any questions you've got for Carlton?
One, actually.
Yes.
What is your most dangerous, I want to say mission, but that sounds too like James Bond spy film. What's been your most dangerous mission?
Okay. Long-term undercover work is dangerous because it affects your mental health, because you are a person and you live the life of that person, and that is who you are. You're not your other person. So that in itself is damaging. probably more damaging than anything else. You're probably thinking of something that's incidental, though, that happens while you're on a mission. And that could be, I've taken people to places that are ultra dangerous in Afghanistan and in Iraq, where, missiles have come down or whatever. And obviously, in recruiting individuals, you recruit them to your cause and then you meet them abroad in another land. And what you're not certain of is whether that person could have been turned back again. And so you're going in to meet people and, you could be signing your death warrant meeting them because, people could be waiting for you. So in a nutshell, there are many areas that are quite dangerous.
So look, we've got about a minute and a half left, but Carlton, one way to, I feel like an amazing way I think you could sum this up was, do you remember when you told me the story about when you had the sixth sense about getting your client out of that territory?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was in a territory no pat drills, and I was meeting. This is what I was saying before to you. I was meeting an agent of mine, and basically, cut long story short, I was in bed in this hotel, very nice hotel, nice place, blah blah blah, and I had this dream whereby a racing car, don't know what happened, smashed right into me, and it did smash into me, and I felt it in my body, and I took that as a premonition. And I got up, ordered the limousine, and went back to the airport. And so, because I figured it was some sort of premonition I was dealing with this individual, and maybe I had recorded it, but not recorded it openly. And maybe my subconscious was then playing that through. And maybe that was the warning. And I just took the warning. I took it. So one thing I'm going to wrap this up with is that to be an agile, to be a spy, you need to be agile and you need to be in touch with your sixth sense, I suppose. With your senses, absolutely. Yes, I would say so. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Carlton. Is there anything we've obviously recorded this and we're going to share this as a tutorial with all of our interns, and we're obviously also going to we're going to give them a platform to ask you any questions back. But is there anything else you want to say apart from, can you please plug your podcast and your book?
Exactly. So please do listen to the Black Spy podcast. We take on a lot of individuals from varying areas of life. And what we try and do is get their feel for life and the geopolitics of it. So please do listen to that. It comes out every Monday at kind of 12:30 at night. So Monday morning, put your headphones on the way to work and just listen to it. It's a great podcast, if I say so myself. And as I said, if you want to read the book, know a little bit more about myself, you can read the book. Basically, just tap in Carlton King and it'll come up. But otherwise, put in the Black Ops, the incredible true story of a British secret agent, and it will come up too. And you can get it on the internet either as a internet book or as an actual physical book. You get it both ways. So and it's from all good book people, so you get it from there. So yeah, I'd be interested for you guys to come onto the podcast, listen to the podcast. I think you'll get something out of it, and please do buy the book. Thank you very much.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
In the quarter of a century, I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.